Okay, you are listening to Hall Monitor, the award-winning Philadelphia Hall Monitor, on WPPM 106.5 in Philadelphia, on Comcast Channel 66, and streaming live at phillycam.org. You can find us on Twitter at Hall Monitor WPPM, on our website www.hallmonitor.org, or on Facebook at PHM WPPM. Tonight on the program, we'll be joined by John Dodds, the Executive Director of the Philadelphia Unemployment Project, and Debbie Way, a founding member of Asians American United, to discuss the ramifications of the proposed Philadelphia 76ers arena. Before I introduce my co-host, I just want to make sure everybody knows the city has announced a heat health emergency starting tomorrow that goes through Saturday at 8 p.m. So a heat health emergency beginning tomorrow that goes until Saturday. All right. So Lance, how are you tonight?
I'm all right. I'm wondering what they expect us to do. Hopefully there'll be some solutions to people who don't have air conditioning.
Yeah. My understanding is they are going to be opening some cooling centers. I will get that information after the interview. I'll have some more on that. And Denise, how are you tonight?
I'm good. I just wonder if they're going to have cooling centers. Are they going to be 24-hour cooling centers? And what are you going to do about the unhoused?
Yeah.
Because that's always where the problem is when it's very, very cold or it's very, very hot. If you either aren't in a shelter for any number of reasons, or you couldn't get into a shelter because they're full, that's a recipe for finding people when it's too late.
Yeah. Let me see what more information I could find out during the interview, and when we come back, I'll maybe have some more to share on that. So Lance, tell us about our conversation here with John Dodds.
John called me up. I'm a friend of John's. I sit on the board of the Philadelphia Unemployment Project. And he called me up, I guess, about a month ago to talk about the problems homeowners were facing when they tried to qualify for a program that was supposed to help people save their homes from mortgage foreclosures. Now, this is a COVID program. People who lost their jobs or were laid off at their jobs or were unable to go to work because of health concerns, who fell behind either on their utility bills or on their mortgages. There was a specific program funded with the American Rescue Plan Act that would take care of them. And this program set aside $350 million. But as of yet, there's still a waiting list, an incredibly long waiting list of people who have applied and still have not gotten answers. So I asked John if you'd come on the program with us, and this is the interview that he gave us.
Here's our interview with John Dodds.
This meeting is being recorded.
Good evening. We're here this evening with John Dodds, the Executive Director of the Philadelphia Unemployment Project. John is going to be talking to us about the mortgage foreclosure crisis that's happening in Pennsylvania. But before we do that, John, first, how are you?
I'm good. Very well. Thank you.
Good. Can you tell us a little bit about PUP?
Well, PUP
is Philadelphia Unemployment Project.
Philadelphia Unemployment Project is a long-term nonprofit organization. It's been in Philadelphia since the 70s. We work with, organize, and provide service to unemployed low-income people. We're here to, and we work with people that are affected by problems, economic problems, basically, and try to make changes for the better for people that are not doing as well as they might economically.
And one of the main projects of the Philadelphia Unemployment Project is the reverse commute program. Can you talk a little bit about that before we talk about the crisis?
Yeah, well, we have, about half the lower income population of Philadelphia does not have a car, do not have automobiles, or they rely on SEPTA. And one of the things that we've found is that SEPTA is almost useless to go to the suburbs. And quite a bit of the jobs in the suburbs tend to pay more money than the jobs in the city. So we have been able to set up a program called Commuter Options, which provides minivans for people to travel to jobs in the suburbs. And we provide a minivan to one of the workers in in the company, they pick up their coworkers and drive to work like any carpool would be, except this is for folks that don't have cars. And we've been doing this for a while. We're very happy with it. It's small. It's only about 75 or 80 people a day go to get to work with our program. We think it should be a lot larger. We're hoping with the new mayor, who's been very supportive of it, we're going to, well, hopefully, we don't know who the new mayor is, but probably the new mayor will be able to expand it. So it's a good part. It speaks to the sort of the in transportation injustice that exists in this country.
Thank you. Now, the reason why we asked you on this evening is to talk about the mortgage foreclosure crisis and what the American Rescue Action Plan was supposed to do and what it's failing to do. So could you give us some background about the program and what the problem is?
Right. The American Rescue Plan provided a lot of money into all over the country, particularly in Pennsylvania, $850 million to pay for renters to keep them from being evicted. And that program worked very well. Tons of money went out to people. We set up a diversion program for landlords that they've got to try to work something out with tenants. And that money has pretty much been spent, that 850 million. The other there was 350 million provided for mortgages and to help people that got behind on their mortgage as a result of the pandemic or afterwards. And that money went to the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency. They decided to contract out their operation of a program. They set up a program called the Pennsylvania Homeowner Assistance Fund, Pennsylvania HAF, HAF. And they located a program that worked with crises and state crisis funding. And they contract with IAM to put out the money. Program opened in February 21. IAM put out over $100 million by February 22. The PHFA was not satisfied with the speed they're getting the money out, and I guess with the record keeping and so forth. And they decided to take the program back from IAM. And in February 22, they shut down all new applications and started on working on getting approving people who were in the pipeline from IAM. That's where a problem began. So 18,000 people, 18,000 homeowners had applied and had not been approved at this point. So PHFA set out to handle that problem. Now, since that time, IAM put out $102 million in the first year they operated. PHFA put out $13 million from February until the end of July. Point is that there's of the people, the 18,000 people that were passed over to PHFA. First thing is they said they didn't get a good record of the applications from the people that were already in IAM. So everybody has to re-register again. So they set out to contact these 18,000 people. Over 10,000 of them never got back to them. So those people have applied, made an application for mortgage assistance. They might have been behind their mortgage by now by over a year, could be in big trouble, but they don't know where they are. Of the 8,000 people that did get back to them, 4,000 of them, they haven't even been able to put a case manager to look at their application. So it's just sitting there. And these are for many months. 3,000 more, they've applied, but they're waiting for more information. And total of about 900 people they have actually got money to. Now, once again, this program has been around since February 21, and many of these people applied back in February or 21 or April or March, April, May. And they're seriously behind on their mortgages. And what we're worrying about, we don't really know. In Philadelphia, fortunately, we're in fairly good shape. We have something called the Mortgage Foreclosure Diversion Program, where we've run that since the Great Recession. That was sort of a big victory we had in organizing homeowners back then. So the courts are holding up foreclosures of anybody that's applied for this Pennsylvania HAF. And about a quarter of the people are from Philadelphia but they're waiting for. 3/4 of them around the rest of the state don't have this kind of protection. And we're very worried these people are losing their homes right now. And right out of the 350 million, we estimate there's $220 million available to pay people's mortgages today that they are not able to ascertain whether they're eligible or not, or whatever, or what. So we had a demonstration in Harrisburg on June 27th, demanding that they expedite the application process, reach out to the courts to try to stop the sales. And it's not clear that there's anything really changed. Now, what they have done is they've emailed all these people, and anybody knows what happens to email half the time is that you don't look at it very often. And out of the 18,000, over 10,000 didn't respond. They're now calling people, but once again, how many people you get a funny phone call from somebody you don't know, you don't answer it. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people do that. So what's happened is they don't know who these people are. And even the ones that did respond, they're taking like this ungodly long process. And, it's an agency that I would say is known for their bureaucratic operations. So it's taken them a long time to deal with these people. This program that they got rid of, IEM, got out $100 million in a year. They're at 13,000, 14,000 at the end of 7-8 months. So that's where we are. Now, the thing is, and anybody that's listening to us that might have applied for Pennsylvania Housing Assistance Fund needs to call Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency. There's an 800 number. You need to call them and get yourself in the mix. It still doesn't guarantee you're going to get a fast result, but at least you're going to be in the mix to get a result. So out of 18, I'm just out of 18. What's that?
We've had a response from some of our viewers that they've tried to call, and the phone actually hasn't been answered, much like during the crisis of the unemployment compensation. It appears that, right. So what would you recommend for people? Is there a way that the Philadelphia Unemployment Project could help people who are waiting?
Anybody, I'll tell you, anybody that's in that spot should call us, and we'd be happy to talk to them. Because we've had homeowners at our rally. I mean, there's people and I'll tell you what, anybody that comes to us, we're going to make sure they don't lose their home, because that's how we operate. We will put pressure on to make sure they don't lose their home. We've been doing that for years, and that's the most basic thing most terrible thing you do to family is throw them out in the street and take their home. So they should call us, but they also should try to call PHFA directly. And I've got the number. I'd like to read it off. Maybe you can find a way to put it up on the screen at some point, but it's, where'd it go here? 888-987-2423. That's the number for people to call. If you've applied for the Pennsylvania Housing Assistance Fund with your delinquent mortgage, call this number if you haven't already, 888-987-2423. And they will then put you into the mix. They'll go through your application. They'll help you re-register. Once again, all these extra steps have been included when they got rid of the contractor. So the other thing that they have committed is that anybody that they know of that's facing a sheriff's sale, they will stop the sheriff's sale. They will intercede. Now, the problem is that people don't know that, and nobody knows it. And what we as advocates, we have a statewide coalition that's held the rally and is working around the state. And we've asked that they contact all the people that they're in touch with and make sure they know that if they're facing a sheriff's sale, let PHFA know you're facing a sheriff's sale, and they should stop They won't necessarily stop it, but they will expedite your application. If you're eligible, they'll get you the money. You can get up to $50,000 to pay your arrears on your mortgage. So most people, that will cure a default. They'll also help you pay your back utilities. I mean, it's a wonderful program, but nobody, they kind of dropping the ball on it tremendously. So there's over 220 million now that's not being utilized. So that's what you should do, is contact them. And what we're asking them to do is tell everybody this. Just make sure all these people, even the 8,000 that got back to you, make sure they know that if they're being scheduled for sheriff sale, to contact them so they can get the money out to them if they're eligible. And we're going to see. We've just been asking them to do that. We asked them, they kind of ignored it. They sent a letter to the courts telling them and one of the problems we have is that there's 67 counties with 67 court systems, the state of Pennsylvania. So Philadelphia, we've got it, we're pretty well organized, but the other 66 counties, it's questionable. So they sent a letter, all of them, saying there's this program, there's a lot of money available, we haven't been able to get it out. But the courts don't operate like that. They're not going to go search for these people. And they told them, if you run into anybody like that, tell them to call us and we will expedite their case. Now, what we don't understand, and we're hoping they will do this, is why they didn't just contact the homeowners themselves and tell them that. So they're telling the courts to do this, to tell the people to call PHFA. And sort of a very logical demand that we're making is you can't tell the people right away. And I mean, the whole point is nobody should lose their home while there's $220 million sitting in the bank in Harrisburg for them. And the question is, how do you make that happen when people are not being communicated with? It's taken them months and months to make a determination. They haven't even looked at over 4,000 cases that people who did the right thing got in. They haven't looked at them yet. They're still sitting there. We don't have enough staff. Go ahead.
Let me turn it over to Larry and Denise. Larry, Denise, do you have questions for John?
Yeah, Denise, you want to go first, or do you want me to?
Sure, I'll go. First of all, thank you, Mr. Dodds, for joining us today.
No, thank you for being here.
And I guess my question is, you have these cases that are outstanding where people have turned in the paperwork and still haven't gotten a response, and this money is just sitting there. What happens to the money if it's not given to the people it needs to go to? Does it have to go back?
Well,
what happens with that?
That's an interesting. I guess they have the 2025 to spend the money. Now, what we had, PHFA had a program in 2020 during the pandemic that they also didn't get out, and they had over half the money that was supposed to go out. They did not get it out, and they ended up, the money got taken and was sent to the prison system, of all things. So, and the other thing they've done now is they've shut down applications, so it's possible new people could apply if they were to reopen it. But I think there's plenty of people so the money will stay for a while. I don't know if you remember, that's part of what the Republicans want to do, was claw back the money from the COVID relief. So they're not able to get this money. They weren't able to pull that off. So the money will be there, but the problem is that people are going to lose their house while they're waiting for it. The banks are not going to wait forever, and they're already not waiting forever.
That was kind of going to be my next question. What happens to these people if the money doesn't come? And you've already kind of answered it by saying that they're going to end up getting foreclosed on. If that happens, will that money still go to pay their back?
No. If they get foreclosed, they're out. They lost their house. Next, you're out. You go. The moving van's coming. You're on the street. Go to a homeless shelter, whatever. Move in with your parents. Do what whatever. The struggles that people have, and there's real research that shows, particularly for children, the impact of children who's ended up in a foreclosure or having lifelong trauma as a result of that. So it's not just like, oh, I got to go live somewhere else, it can really screw people up in a fundamental way. So we really think it's important that people not lose this, that nobody lose their house till the money's out. And, we've contemplated and we've been trying to get attorneys to file what's called a King's Bench petition that the Supreme Court could stop all sales. Haven't been able to sort of enlist the lawyers to do this. So we're really asking, minimally, we think that PHFA needs to make sure anybody that's facing foreclosure knows that they will stop it. They haven't even done that. That minimal step is to say, look, if you've got a sheriff's sale scheduled, we will expedite it and we'll get your money before the sale. So no, it's a disgrace. I mean, as I think Lance mentioned, it was very similar to the unemployment thing where people had we had all this money for unemployment. And at one point there were over 300,000 people waiting to be determined eligibility, and people were waiting months and months to get their unemployment benefits. And God knows how many of those, I know some of those people got evicted and lost their cars and lost their homes, and we're going through it again. I mean, it's very disturbing. Congress provides all this money. I mean, they did some good stuff to protect people from COVID and the aftermath, and it comes to Pennsylvania and we're dropping the ball. So
now, is it an administrative glitch?
Yeah.
Is it just people not knowing what they're doing?
Well, PHFA does not have a wonderful track record in handling programs like this, and that's what they did. As soon as they got it, they we're going to contract it out because I think they know they're not so good at it. Now, why they decided to take it back, I'm not sure exactly what this outfit was doing, but I do know they got out over $100 million. So that's already been done, though. So that's really not an argument now. I mean, we look, if you were to analyze, what we're focusing on now is getting people help before they lose their house. But yeah, I think that is the problem. That a lot of this, it happened in unemployment too. There's all these funds and there's nobody to handle it. And and I will say with unemployment, with the new administration, they're actually making an effort to do something about it. I think the Wolf administration was more, oh, there's nothing we can do. We're doing the best we can. We had a pandemic. What do you expect? 300,000 people are not getting their money. Oh, well. The Shapiro people brought in new people who knew there was a disaster. They're fixing it. Now, this PHFA is, they're not really geared up for this, and they needed to gear up. I guess they're hiring people, but once again, there needs to be extraordinary steps taken because they're not going to get it done that quickly. We're asking to really expedite the process. We just were on a call the other day. There's a 13-step procedure to get approved. Well, you're waiting 13 steps when you got 17,000 people that you can't even look at most of their they haven't even looked at over half their applications yet. Why don't you cut it down? Get rid of a bunch of those steps because we got a crisis. We got all this money. We got people that are deserving, and we got foreclosures. So that's and they're somewhat oblivious. They're somewhat oblivious to this. I mean, like I say, they sent a letter to the courts. And well, the courts are not going to reach out to this population. The courts don't even know who they are. And they could, and the courts are not going to start like social working. That's not what courts do. I mean, maybe they should, but they don't. And so anyhow, it's a very frustrating circumstance. And like I say, we communicated with that. We've been back and forth with the director of the agency, Robin Weissman, and we're telling her minimally, you've got to tell everybody that call them if they're facing sheriff's sale. And also, we're also asking them to come up with a plan where you can go door to door to find these people. That's something we also seems kind of likely. They got all this money, you can get people to knock on doors. The email didn't work, the phone call didn't work. They're going to, and they're also done a road show. I find this to be interesting. So on Friday and Saturday, the road show comes to Philadelphia for people who did not apply. Now, the question is, how will people know that this road show is here? And what's been happening around the state, from what I understand, is these people come and sit in a room, and half dozen people in a day come in. But anyhow, and I'll just pass this on to your listeners, viewers. On Friday, they're going to be at Esperanza at 406 West Bristol, and that's going to be from 10 to 7. So if you're in this mortgage issue, you can, and you've applied for this program, you could go there and they will help you. And on Saturday, they're going to be at the Enterprise Center in West Philadelphia at 24 South 52nd Street from 9 to 2. Now, I think what's going to happen is they're going to sit there and they're going to have very few people come in. So we've asked them to start, maybe contract with housing counseling agencies across the state to start knocking on doors and let people know that this money's here. If you're behind your mortgage, you gotta act. You've already applied. All these people already applied. They probably think they're okay, but they're not okay anymore. And like I say, the third thing we're asking is they really expedite the process. They can't take all the steps, all the bureaucratic stuff. A lot of this stuff is driven by lawyers. Oh, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do this. And meanwhile, people, they got 4,000 they can't even look at yet. They're just sitting there for weeks and months. I mean, come on, you got to move it, is our opinion. So, I'm sure their lawyer has a different opinion, but anyway.
Is there anything the city can do about this?
It's a program came to the state legislature directed it to PHFA's responsible. I don't know, we could have, the mayor could scream and yell. I mean, that would be something that I guess we could use more people to holler about it. But it's really this agency who's responsible for it. And, they've got the applications, they've all been done. They just have to move them. And they have to give people, protect people while they're taking their good old lonesome and moving them. That's what I would say.
Okay. Well, I'm going to give you now to our co-host, Larry McGlynn, and you're still listening to Hall Monitor on WPPM 106.5.
All right. Thank you, Denise. And Mr. Dobbs, thank you for joining us.
Oh, you're very welcome.
So Denise took a couple of my questions, but I still have a couple more. One of the things that astounds me and disappoints me greatly is we have this program that's so beneficial, and the state can't get its act together. Why was this farmed out? Why does that happen?
I think it was farmed out. Well, I think the thing is there was no logical agency to handle this money. So PHFA, they run a very small mortgage assistance program that I think they do a terrible job with, and they turn down 80% of the people who apply, which is a whole different story. But that's a pretty big agency. They do a lot of low income housing. They actually service mortgages themselves. They loan out money. They float bonds, and so they got it. And like I said, they had another program, and half the money that they used that's for mortgage, and they're going to the prison. So I guess they thought, well, we're not doing very good with this. Now, maybe my question is, why didn't they stay on top of the people you got to do it better, and rather than take it back and having all the problems that have ensued from that, why didn't you keep working with them? That seemed like they were getting money out. Now, they might have been not being quite as bureaucratic, or I don't want to speak for them other than that they got a lot of money to people who needed it. That they have done. What they did wrong, I have not really gotten any detailed information on. But it is frustrating. It's the same with the unemployment comp. I mean, you get all these good programs, you send it, and that's something I think we have to look at as a society. Is if you got crises, how you got to put an implementation plan in along with the program, because the Congress is doing all this good stuff, and it gets to the state and it gets all fouled up. So,
well, and that's one of the things that gets me. So in the early days of the pandemic, for somebody to say, we're just not sure exactly how we're going to do this yet, that's reasonable. I understand.
Yes,
Fine. But we're 3 years past this now.
absolutely.
And we still have people who and when you talk about people losing their home, it's exactly right. It's the number one thing that kills wealth. It creates all kinds of hardships for families and long-term trauma. And you would think, now that we're aware of these things, the problems that are caused, we'd be trying to move on this. Is there any kind of timeline that the state is putting out to say, okay, we're going to try to get this wrapped up by this amount of time? That they don't have any kind of plan for this?
They're doing their road show. They're all going to sit, and rather, I think they just wasted a lot of time.
Yeah.
We did ask them to file a suit with the Supreme Court to halt all sheriff sales for people that are applied for this program. They turned us down. No, they don't. And the requirement that the program comes from the U.S. Department of the Treasury. They're supposed to make a decision within 60 days, which. So they're worried about all these requirements, the 13 steps, but the first step is you got to do it in 60 days. So they kind of ignore that while they're going through, oh, we need this paperwork, we need that paperwork, where's your deed, where's this, where's that, boom. And that's what's frustrating. It was the same with unemployment. They were so worried about fraud that they let 300,000 people starve to death because there'd be some fraud, which there is some fraud. But what's worse, having people literally starving with no income for months on end, or, and it's the same with this, like, get the money out. Yeah, maybe somebody didn't get all the paperwork right, but if they lose their house, it's a devastation for that family, and it's a cost to the society. Obviously, you got to take care of those people somehow, or you could just let them sleep on the street, which of course we're willing to do too. But anyway.
Paperwork can be corrected. It doesn't have to be the end all be all.
Thank you. I wish you were the head of PHFA. That's what we're trying to say. Look, you got to move it. You just can't sit on this stuff. And they just, and they say, anybody that tells us that they're losing their home, we're going to work on them. But nobody knows.
Yeah. Well, and Lance, I don't know if you saw some of Lance's reports on SEPTA that were just incredible. But, he went to some of these SEPTA meetings. It's the same thing. Nobody really knew. A lot of people, in some of these meetings, people don't show up because they don't know about it. It's like that with a lot of things that are meant to help people, So we're hoping that we can help get the word out a little bit. I think I have a couple ideas about that we can talk about after the interview. There might be a couple things we can do. But for right now, thank you so much. And I'm going to turn you back over to Lance.
All right.
John, how do people get a hold of you and PUP if they have these concerns?
Yeah, all right. Our phone number is 215-557-0822. And anybody that's worried about it. Now, unfortunately, if you haven't already applied for this program, we have people who will help you then too. We have people who will help you. But for the half program, you've got already applied. If you're behind on your mortgage, we can also help you. So they should just call us. But either way, we have housing counselors that have been very skilled at working out deals and preventing foreclosures. And I will say we have a very good program in the city through the courts that holds up foreclosures and forces banks to offer affordable payment agreements. Very, very good stuff. Ever since that got put in the Great Recession in 2008, and it's still functioning, I'm happy to say. So that's where they call us, 215-557-0822.
Thank you, John. Appreciate your time this evening. We will do our best to get the information out, and we will send out more information on our next email blast.
Right,
so
great.
People who are behind will know what they can do. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right. We would like to thank Mr. John Dobbs of the Philadelphia Unemployment Project for being with us. And Lance, did you have something you wanted to add here?
No, it's just to reiterate, here's the money that's been allocated by Congress, comes to Pennsylvania. The agency decides to contract out, and the money just stays there. There's no accountability. The company that was supposed to be doing it, that failed to get the money out, has no accountability. No one's going to jail for it. No one's being fired for it. The agency takes the program away from the contractor, and the contractor either doesn't or will not provide all the background information. So these families are out here sweating, worrying, and waiting for their application to be judged, for it to be either accepted or denied so they know what to do next. And somehow we're willing to do things to prosecute people for much smaller types of crimes, but for these type of economic crimes, for this type of malfeasance, nobody is held accountable, and that's really a shame. You would think that the Attorney General of Pennsylvania or the United States Justice Department or the Federal Trade Commission would look at this contractor and say, you're going to be barred from getting a contract like this again for at least 18 months so that no other family has to suffer. But yet somehow it just seems to fall through the crack. The company will get another contractor with another state, with another agency, and it will continue to hurt people.
Right. So we have some more information about this heat emergency that we're dealing with here. This designation begins at 9 a.m. tomorrow and is scheduled to end at 8 p.m. on Saturday. This activates the city's emergency heat programs, which include the Philadelphia Corporation for the Aging Heat Line, cooling centers, home visits by special field teams, enhanced daytime outreach for people experiencing homelessness, and the city's reminder to the public to safely check on older friends, relatives, and neighbors from a distance. The Philadelphia Corporation for the Aging's Heat Line number is 215-765-9040. That's 215-765-9040, and will be open between 8:30 a.m. and midnight tomorrow through Saturday. And this could be extended if the forecast changes. So cooling centers are all free library locations will be open to the public from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. As a cooling center. Recreation centers are going to be open as cooling centers, and pools and spray grounds will be open. Utility shutoffs are suspended, which is good. There will be outreach to homeless people, and that's kind of a synopsis of where we are with the heat emergency. And before we go, we will give out those phone numbers one more time for people. So the next interview we have is with Debbie Way, who is one of the founders of the Asian American United Group, and she's going to speak with us about the arena, the proposed arena that is in and around Chinatown. So here's our interview with Debbie.
Okay, yeah, whenever you're good to start, you can go for it.
Well, thank you so much for speaking with us. So the first thing I'd like to ask you before we get into what we're here to talk about, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved?
Okay, well, my name is Debbie Way. I am a co-founder and now member of Asian Americans United on the central committees of the Save Chinatown Coalition and the Chinatown Coalition to Oppose the Arena, which are two broad-based coalitions, one kind of outside of Chinatown, one inside of Chinatown, opposing the arena. Chinatown has always been part of my family's history. I didn't live here, I didn't grow up here, but that I think is something that's really important for people to understand, because Chinatown is the cultural, spiritual, social, everything center for Asian Americans in this area. So I have very fond memories of every week coming here to buy groceries with my parents from the time I was quite young. All major, I think what's important about Chinatown is that it's not just a geographic location. I always say communities are made up of relationships and memories. Chinatown carries relationships and memories for so many of us in this area. I got married in Chinatown. When my kids were born, we celebrated in Chinatown. Birthdays in Chinatown. Their graduations are in Chinatown. When my father died, the dinner we had after the funeral was in Chinatown. So I think it's those things that tie us to this community and make us feel that it is our responsibility to fight for this community, because this community has been that for every Asian American in this area for 150 years.
Well, you don't have to be born in a place for it to be home,
Right.
right? I think a lot of people feel that way. Tell us a little bit about what's happening here. What is this issue?
This issue is 3 predatory billionaires deciding on behalf of the entire city that they have the answer. What their PR team puts out is that they have the answer to revitalize Market Street, as though another great big concrete block similar to what's there now, similar to the convention center, is about revitalization. It's a played out 1980s version of urban revitalization. More importantly, it is 3 predatory developers. These are not like sports bros who are just wanting to do a good thing for the city. You don't become a billionaire by being a nice guy. You become a multi-billionaire by doing real estate development. We know they're coming for our community. They want to gentrify. We are the last remaining community of color in downtown Philadelphia. And I think it's important for people to know, when I was a child, this was not a desirable area to live in. This was Skid Row. It was a red light district. It was the only place where Chinese were welcome to live. And out of that, we created homes. We created a community. Well, now suddenly, this has become a hot area because it's Center City. And I think they know that damn well. So I think this is the money people going for the money.
How did you become aware that this project was being proposed for this area?
I became aware the way everybody else in Philadelphia became aware. There was an announcement that was put in the newspaper. That is not how these projects generally are done. Usually people will come down to the community, meet with you, say what we're thinking about, what are your concerns, we have a discussion. They have 2 or 3 different sites they're looking at. The arrogance of these billionaires, people that are used to buying whatever they want and no one ever saying no to them, they just announced that this was happening without any discussion whatsoever with the people in this community.
Subverting every accepted way that these things are done.
Yeah, I mean,
RCO, community groups.
RCO,
multiple
community
conversations.
groups, all their, we want to be a good neighbor. No.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah,
That's
but
awesome.
followed by a series, not only did they do that, they already started out by doing that, they started out as at a deficit in terms of our community trusting
of
them.
course.
It was on them to build the trust with the community. Instead, they started to gaslight the community. They first said that, David Edelman was quoted as saying, well, the community is either for it or neutral. This is the majority of the community. How would you know that when you haven't talked to anyone? Like, we clearly are not neutral, and we clearly are not in support of this. Then they went on to try to sneak up. They put a clause in an unrelated finance bill for a parking garage to close Filbert Street.
Yeah.
When we caught it, Council Member Squilla said, I didn't put it in there, even though he introduced the bill. I didn't even know it was in there. Mayor Kenny put it in there. And then Mayor Kenny said, I didn't put it in there. Councilmember Squilla put it in there. Well, we found out later through a reporter that it was the Sixers attorney that put it in there. They get to write legislation now for the city.
Yeah.
They followed that up with, they came like a week later to a community meeting, the only open community meeting they've ever had with Chinatown, and not one that they called, one that we called. People were upset and angry because they had just tried to pass this bill through. They left the meeting early. In fact, the developers didn't even come. They sent their DEI guy, David Gould, as their front person. I mean, Councilmember Squilla stayed. Elected officials who sent representatives, they all stayed, but the developers left the meeting early in the face of questioning, which they would not and could not answer from the community. They then got caught trying to buy the mayoral election and putting a lot of dark money into a PAC. Got charged by the ethics board.
Yeah.
Ethics violation. Not 2 months later, I think, they get caught again, another ethics violation by trying to hide some of their lobbying money on this project. They walked out of the community in December and did not contact any of us again, ever. We understand that they had a meeting with some Chinatown folks in July, in the beginning of July, but that's like 7 months after this community meeting. After the Philadelphia Chinatown Development Corporation was the kind of last Chinatown organization to come out against the arena in March. The next day, they went online and started talking about how they had the support of the African American Chamber of Commerce, and they trotted out a handful of African American clergy.
Yep.
And so, like, these kind of
It's a common tactic.
really slimy moves and tactics make it so, like, at this point, there's no coming back. At this point, they have done, not only have they done nothing to win our trust, they have done everything to show that they don't really care about anything except their pockets. They really want to just ram this thing through, are using everything in their power to try to figure out how to ram this through. They will say things like, so let me ask anybody, right? Like, let's say you live, this is a city of row houses, right? Let's say I have a row house, and I have this, like, a bar that moves in next door to me. They're my row house neighbor. Would you say they're in my community? I would.
Yeah.
Their arena backs up as onto our very first business. So imagine that your row house neighbor is a massive arena. And yet they keep saying we're not in Chinatown. And that's another soundbite they keep. You know, even when the baseball stadium was being built, like, that was north of Vine Street. Like, those guys never said we're not in Chinatown. They never would have dared to say that.
Right.
Like, they knew they were impacting this community. The casino that they tried to put in, that we fought in 2008, they never said we're not in Chinatown. Never said it. But these guys, they'll do anything to try to get this thing through. And, like, those types of just really unethical, immoral actions are part and parcel of who they are.
So let's assume this thing does get built. What's going to happen here? What kind of problems is this going to cause?
Okay, so 6 years of construction, where you have
Right down the
massive
street from where we are right now.
Right, massive street closures. How long did it take you to get parking here today?
Yeah, it took a while. Yeah.
Okay, this is a normal day. No big event happening. This is just a normal Friday in this area, right? What do you think it's going to be like when 10th Street, Market Street, and 11th Street are blocked because of construction?
Yep.
for 6 years.
Yep.
And then what do you think it's going to be like when they have these events where they compress 18,000 people coming in within a 1 hour period and then leaving all at the same time?
Nobody from the suburbs is taking public transportation to get here for these games.
Well,
I don't.
Well, right now, 70% of people that go to games drive in. And there is a culture in Philadelphia in that stadium district. And it's a Philly thing, right? It's like you go down, you tailgate, you go, you know where to park. Everybody has their favorite parking area. Everybody knows where to park because it's closest to whatever. You don't change at generation. That's a generational pattern. Right? Like that's not just, oh, they built it last year and now we're doing something different. This is like generations of Philadelphians have grown up with this. With absolutely no study whatsoever, they've declared that 70% is dropping to 30%. There's nothing that they can give as reason other than, oh, mass transit stops here. Well, mass transit stops in South Philly too. So, like, what the heck? They also say their own traffic study that we actually had to do a Freedom of Information request to get because they don't make their information open. They shoehorned this in by A, saying they're going to drop from 70% to 30%, B, that every car driving in is going to carry 3 people, therefore they won't need as many cars, C, that a whole bunch of those cars are going to come in early to go out for dinner. So that spreads it out. And D, that a whole bunch of people are going to be taking Uber, so they're not going to need parking. So they put all that together, and then they produced this traffic report that says, okay, it's going to work. Which is, I'm not a city planner. I'm not an architect. I'm not a traffic engineer.
I don't think you need to be one.
I'm reading this thing and I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Like, how could you even believe this? So we just did a down and dirty stupid thing, right? Like 3,000 cars, right? How long is a car? Give or take, with room in the front and the back, you're driving at about 10 feet, right? How many cars in a block? We figured that out. We divided by 3,000, we're talking about 12 miles of cars. 12 miles coming into this area.
Down these little streets.
One lane streets.
Yes. Going
into parking garages that have a single solitary entrance and egress. What I don't understand is how the city accepts these things as that, like they find these types of things acceptable.
Right.
It blows my mind. Same thing with the Greyhound bus station. Look what happened to Greyhound.
Already.
Again,
Yeah.
an example of people with money trying to make money off the backs of low-income, largely people of color. So who rides Greyhound? It's people that can't afford planes, trains, so they take Greyhound. And this is not the little like mega bus New York run.
Right.
Greyhound goes all over the country. This is a major city.
Yeah.
It's a major destination. So all of a sudden, overnight, we knew that they were going to close it down. We didn't know when. We knew that they took the Greyhound station because they need it, because the arena footprint is that large. But the city didn't, people in the city didn't know. And we didn't know when that was going to shut down. All of a sudden, it shuts down in probably the most horrendously hot summer in the history of this city. They dump everyone out on Market Street where there's no chairs, there's no shade, there's no water, there's no toilets. Market Street, which is it's a state street. It's not even a city street. That's how major it is. Buses that need to come down there, and now they can't stop because Greyhound is now taking up the entire Market Street. And what do they have with Greyhound up there? They have an empty station that has fencing around it now. If you walk up there, you just see chain link fence. That's all you see.
Mhm.
So, like, I don't know. I just have to wonder what's happening in the city. Like,
Yeah.
like, who's accountable? Who's letting this stuff happen? At the end of the day, who takes accountability for allowing this to happen?
Are you encouraged at all? Because, you know, there's the long-standing tradition in the city of Councilman Grandi. Are you encouraged at all by Councilmember Squill saying, if the people who live in Chinatown don't want this, we're not going to do it?
No, because he did say that.
Mhm.
He
said
said,
it,
look,
he said it to us, too.
he said it several times. If
Mhm.
Chinatown doesn't want it, it's not going to happen. So in many meetings with him, I said, what do you need from us to tell you that we don't want it? You know, whatever it is you need from us, we'll get it to you. We surveyed residents, we surveyed businesses, we've had public meetings. It is very clear our community does not want this. He won't answer me. He's never answered me. He's never told me, what do you want? So while we're in these meetings asking for this, the Sixers are going forward
Mhm.
with their plans. They're trying to push all this through. They're trying to rush it. Probably because the incoming city council members, a number of them, have already said they won't vote for it.
Mhm.
So got to get it done before the new
Yeah.
folks take their seats. Got to get it done before Kenny leaves, because you don't want Sherelle Parker having to hold the responsibility for causing this boondoggle. Got to have it happen before the fashion district has to declare bankruptcy, right? So they're pushing this through. They're rushing. We're like, okay, if you're not going to tell us, like, what else can we do? Like, okay, we're going to demand impact studies. We're going to demand to know what impact is this going to have on our community, and the impact studies should study both the accumulation of us having to take the Vine Street Expressway, Market Street East, the commuter rail tunnel, the convention center, the galleries 1 and 2, and then the construction from the fashion district. You stick all that together and talk about the impact of on our community of another 6-year construction project.
Yeah.
We had a very specific request for proposals that we actually drafted with professionals, architects, urban planners, sociologists, you know, specialists in their field, sat down, put together a very comprehensive RFP for an impact study. We presented it to Councilmember Squilla. We presented it to the Planning Commission. All of a sudden, we don't hear anything. A few months later, they come back and they say, hey, we're going to do impact studies. The impact studies are not the ones that we asked for.
Yeah.
They're designed to help, designed to recommend community benefits agreements, which the whole community says we don't want, because we don't want the arena. We told them this is not what we asked for, and they are continuing on with this process. They put us in a situation where Mark Squilla said, oh, you can have my seat on the selection team. So why do we want to be on a selection team for a study that is not what we want?
Yeah.
On the one hand. On the other hand, they're going to say, oh, well, we offered them a seat at the table and they wouldn't take it. So we're in a no-win situation. We are at the table, and we continue to say this is not what we asked for, this is not what we asked for. They're continuing to push forward. They put this in the hands of PIDC, which is a quasi-public-private entity, but it's the Philadelphia Industrial Development Corporation.
Yes.
Their whole raison d'etre is to facilitate large development projects happening in this city. And so there are people on their board that have direct conflict of interest because they work with the developers. There's all this stuff. We're like, why isn't it the city? Why is it PIDC? Who's accountable at the end? They keep saying, oh, well, they're just doing it, you know, but it's still the city accountable. And then we find out that the Sixers are paying for the study. So, like, you put it all together,
Okay, we would like to thank Debbie Way for joining us. I want to remind everybody that we are under a heat advisory. If you notice somebody who is homeless and is having trouble, you can call 215-232-1984. That's 215-232-1984. Thank you very much, and we will see you next week on Hall Monitor.
When did you do the interview, Larry?
Are we still?
Oh, we're still
Okay, we are still on the program. We are still live, apparently. So I want to reiterate some of these phone numbers. If you know someone who is older and might be concerned, you might be concerned about their well-being, you can call 215-765-9040. That's the Philadelphia Corporation for the Aging. And libraries and community centers will be available. Pools and spray grounds will be available. And if you are looking for outreach for homeless individuals, you can call 215-232-1984. That's 215-232-1984. So we will be back next week on Hall Monitor.